In those dark, bloody days following the fall of Troy, as the ashes of the burning city scattered with the wind, armies dispersed, and each warrior forged their own path. Some plunged into the perilous waters of the sea to return home. Others headed for new lands in pursuit of spoils. I, Nerios, was a nameless soldier, cast into the shadow of that great epic. I had neither swung a sword for victory, nor shed tears for loss. I had merely survived, continuing to breathe amidst Troy's screams, flames, and death, by some strange twist of fate. And now, this cursed life was charting a new, unknown destiny for me, dragging me into an abyss I never expected. I walked north, towards the dark, mysterious ridges of the constantly howling mountains, with only my rusty sword and the memories gnawing at my soul, the destruction of Troy, the deaths of my comrades, my own inner fears, all burdened my shoulders like a heavy weight. In the first days of my journey, as I moved along the paths, there was a strange name constantly whispered by the wind, mingling with the rustling of leaves. Lykaon. Initially, I attributed it to the fatigue of the long journey, a trick my mind was playing on me. I thought my mind was searching for escape routes from the horrors of Troy. But in every village I passed, every ruined inn, every mountain pass, this name began to haunt me, following me like a shadow. During the day, in people's whispers, and at night, when I fell asleep, a muffled, ancient voice whispered into my ear from the darkest corners of my dreams, saying, "Remember the flesh, your claws, your teeth, the blood." This whisper was not just a sound, but also a call, awakening a primitive side within me. As I approached the northern mountains, even nature itself seemed to change, as if cursed by this name. The trees were sparser, their leaves paler, and the sky had oddly taken on a deep, gloomy, dark purple, as if an eternal twilight reigned. The air was freezing, my lungs burned with every breath. At night, the moon ceased to be a mere light source shining in the sky, turning blood red, like freshly spilled blood. Its light was a color that made one's soul shiver, awakening the most primitive fears within. One evening, as I wearily set up camp among the bushes, I noticed a pair of yellow eyes watching me in the dim light. They glowed, as if looking at me from within the darkness. It wasn't a wolf. It was much larger, much more menacing, and yes, strangely, something more human. It was a fleeting glance, but the intelligence in its gaze was not that of an animal. Whenever I tried to approach, it would vanish instantly, silently, like a shadow, leaving only the rustle of the wind behind. This was not an ordinary encounter. It was a warning. By the end of my third week of travel, I was physically exhausted and mentally drained by Lykaon's whispers. And at that very moment, the first change came. I woke up on a rainy, stormy night with lightning tearing through the sky. My body was burning, every cell ablaze, my bones aching as if breaking. It felt as if something inside me was cracking, reshaping. When I looked at my hands, the sight chilled my blood. My fingertips had blackened, their flesh thickened, and my nails had turned into sharp, curved claws, just like a predator's. I wanted to scream, to rebel against this horrifying sight, but my voice turned into a muffled, primitive growl struggling to escape my throat. Then, everything went dark. My consciousness faded, and I fell into a black void. When I came to in the morning, the air was still gray and hazy, and the rain had stopped. My whole body ached, my muscles sore. 100 meters from my camp, I found the mangled, bloody carcass of a deer. The animal's chest was ripped open, its flesh torn, and its heart was missing. I noticed dried blood on my lips and a metallic taste in my mouth. When mixed with my own saliva, this taste became even more distinct. I looked at my hands. They were still trembling. They were human hands now, but there were still dried brown bloodstains at the base of the nails. This blood was not mine. It was a dream, I murmured to myself, my voice hoarse and weak. Just a nightmare, another trick Troy played on me. I tried to deceive myself, but a growing doubt, a fear was swelling within me. But the next night came again. This time, the pain was more intense, unbearable. My bones felt like they were shattering, my muscles twisting as if tearing, my spine bent as if it would break, feeling like it would burst out of my back. My jaw elongated, my teeth sharpened, and coarse, stiff hairs began to grow on my face. My body was undergoing a terrifying transformation beyond my control. In that last human moment, before I completely lost consciousness, I saw my own reflection in a puddle illuminated by lightning. It was no longer me. It was the silhouette of a monster, wild, primal, and terrifying. My eyes had changed, turning yellow. Then, darkness. Absolute darkness. When I came to with the first light of dawn, I was exhausted and worn out. My surroundings were strewn with broken tree branches. I was near a village. My clothes were torn and tattered, my body covered in blood and mud. Screams were heard from a distance. Terrified, panicked screams. "Werewolf! The werewolf has come! Cursed monster!" I saw with my own eyes. A house in the village was ablaze, its smoke rising to the sky. Was I responsible for what had happened? In horror, I checked myself. There was a deep, bleeding wound on my right thigh. I had bitten myself with my own teeth, unknowingly. On my left arm, there were deep claw marks, just like my own. This was definitely not a dream. But the most terrifying thing was what I felt after this change. A kind of power, a kind of joy, a primal satisfaction, a life force felt after a bloody hunt. I felt stronger, faster, more alive. Every muscle in my body was filled with a new might. Despite the pain I felt at night, this new existence created an indescribable exhilaration within me. This was a curse, yes, but it was also a gift. For the next few days, I hid deep in the mountains, away from the village, in a damp, dark cave. I observed the changes in my body. At night, my claws emerged, my teeth elongated, my face became covered with hair. During the day, these symptoms disappeared, and I looked like a normal human. Only that yellow gleam in my eyes and the fatigue on my face remained. My vision had sharpened. I could notice the slightest movement. My sense of smell had become incredibly strong. One day, I realized I could smell a rabbit, even a human, half a mile away. The scent of every animal in the forest, every flower, reached my nose. But what frightened me most was how this change affected me. I could no longer stop thinking about meat, raw, bloody meat. From the dark corners of my mind, like Lycan's whispers, even the thought of human flesh arose. This thought terrified me. Confronting the monster within me was horrifying, but at the same time it was strangely tempting, like a forbidden delicacy. The primal hunter within me grew stronger with each passing moment. On the fifth night, as the full moon began to shine in the sky, I managed to gain some control over my transformation. Without undergoing a complete transformation, I only allowed my hands to claw, my muscles to swell, and my skin to thicken. With these claws, I tore apart a thick tree with one blow,
something a human, even a warrior, normally couldn't do. Pieces of wood ripped from the tree trunk scattered around. At that moment, I understood that this was more than a curse. This was a gift, a power bestowed upon me by the gods or some unknown force. But every gift came with a price, every power with a test. Would I pay the price for these powers until the next full moon? Would I completely lose my soul and turn into a monster? Or would I manage to control this power? And most importantly, who was Lycan, and why had he chosen me? Why had Nerios, that nameless soldier of Troy, become the bearer of this ancient curse? As I moved deeper into the mountains, I felt something calling me. Perhaps the answers were there, the origin of this curse, the knowledge of how to live with it. Perhaps I would face my true destiny there and make peace with this new existence. All I knew was that there was no turning back. The Nerios of Troy was dead. What remained, I didn't know yet, but I had to find out.
I chose my prey. It was the weakest of the herd, a young male deer with a wounded leg. I set my sights on him, and a hunter's strategies began to spin in my mind. When my claws emerged, I no longer felt pain. There was only the intoxicating sensation of power and savagery. My muscles tensed, my body transforming into a perfect weapon created for hunting. I approached silently, moving against the wind, calculating each step. Then, with perfect timing, a gigantic leap. As I gripped my prey's neck with a savage bite, in one swift motion, warm, vital blood poured down my throat. This time, I did not completely lose myself. I resisted my instincts and took only what I needed, what was necessary for my survival, finding the strength within me to leave the rest. This was the first sign of control. But my triumph was short-lived. My joy ended too soon. Just as I stood over my prey, I heard a crack behind me. It was as if a branch had broken, but the sound was much harsher, much more deliberate. When I turned, 3 wolves stood on the rocks amidst the shadows. They were no ordinary wolves. Their eyes were human-like, sparkling with intelligence just like mine. The largest one, with dark fur, stepped forward and spoke in a muffled, guttural, yet intelligible voice. "Lykaon sent us to test you, his last heir." I recoiled in surprise. Everything in my mind turned upside down. Talking wolves? What else will I see? Is this a dream? "You still don't understand what you are," said the female wolf, her voice sharper and more mocking. "We are Lycaon's first children, the first bearers of this curse. You are the last. Welcome among us, new brother." The other male wolf growled threateningly. "Show him, brother. Let him see our strength." All 3 leapt at me. My instincts kicked in. My body began to move independently of me. I attacked with my claws, with a primitive savagery. I felled the first male wolf, tearing its ribs with my claws, but the female wolf attacked from behind with an unexpected speed, her claws tearing my shoulder. It was painful, but surprisingly, my wound healed in minutes with visible speed. This was the first time I had seen this power. This curse had also bestowed upon me an incredible healing ability. Was this a part of immortality?
As I fought, the monster within me fully awakened, taking complete control. My eyes darkened, my vision turned entirely red, my body grew, my muscles swelled. I was no longer just half transformed, but a full werewolf, like a reflection of Lykaon himself. I attacked with my claws, bit with my teeth. I savagely killed two of the wolves, their bodies torn to pieces. The third one, the female wolf, fled, disappearing into the darkness. When I came to, after the blood was shed, with the first light of dawn, what stood before me horrified me. I had torn apart two wolf bodies, scattering blood and fur everywhere. Worst of all, I had enjoyed it, the taste of blood, the intoxication of victory. At that moment I understood how dangerous the monster within me was, how deep it had descended. But I had also learned something else, that Lykaon was after me, observing me, and wanted to include me in his lineage. This test was part of my becoming a werewolf. I continued my journey toward the mountain peak. My feet were no longer tired. My body was filled with newly acquired strength. I now knew what I was, a cursed heir, Lycaon's last child. The question was, would I be able to control this power, or would it control me, turning me completely into a monster? And why did Lykaon want me? The answers must be at the peak, in the shadow of an ancient temple ruin, where legends whispered and the shadows of gods roamed.
As I journeyed alone through the dark, steep ridges of the mountains, each step was like an echo of the new being growing and transforming within me. I felt and understood the change in my body more and more each day. It used to be like an uncontrollable, painful curse. Now it was slowly transforming into a gift I was taming, a primal power bestowed upon me by fate. I could extend my claws at will, feel my muscles swell beneath my skin. At night, I could sharpen my eyesight, catching the slightest movement, the smallest whisper, even in the deepest darkness of the forest. However, as the full moon approached, beginning to rise like a blood-red circle in the sky, the beast within me awakened more powerfully, shaking me with a primal call rising from the depths of my soul. It became harder to cope with it each passing night. By the end of my second week of travel, amidst a fierce storm, I took shelter in an abandoned, wind-howling old mine tunnel at the foothills of the mountains. The cold, damp air coming from behind the rusty iron gates at the tunnel's entrance sent a shiver down my spine. There were strange, primitive carvings on the stone walls, faint, worn, yet still distinct. They were human figures, but with wolf heads, some chained, some raising their claws to the sky, howling as if— was this a temple related to Lykaon's curse, or merely strange traces left by a forgotten mining community? When I descended to the deepest, darkest, quietest corner of the tunnel, I found a chained, decaying skeleton. Its bones were broken, its ribs bore deep claw marks, just like mine. It was as if this skeleton was a ghost from my future. Beside it, preserved from the dampness of the earth, lay an old clay tablet. On it, Clearly etched in ancient letters was an inscription: "The lineage of Lykaon is immortal." My heart began to pound in my chest. This was a message, a warning, a prophecy. That night, deep within the mine tunnel, as I fell asleep amidst the stones and dead bones, I saw him in my dream, Lykaon. He was not the monster of legends. He was an old man with a gray beard, his eyes burning like flames, yellow-eyed. His face seemed familiar to me, as if it were my own reflection in old age. He reached out to me, extended his hand, and his voice echoed in the depths of my dreams. "We share blood, Nerios. You are my last heir, the last son to survive Troy's destruction. This curse will extend to eternity with you. The power is with you." When I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. On my wrist, like proof of that dream, a fresh scar had appeared that hadn't been there before, in the shape of a wolf's claw. This was no longer just a curse. It was a blood oath. A physical bond had been forged between Lykaon and me. The next morning, as the first rays of the sun filtered through the tunnel entrance, I underwent my first conscious transformation. The primal power within me, combined with Lykaon's whispers, turned into an uncontrollable urge. I surrendered myself to the desolate, wind-swept slopes of the mountains, listening to the sound of the wind, the call of nature. A sharp scent that seized my mind drew me in. Fresh blood. There was a herd of wounded deer nearby, and I could also smell a hunter's camp, but they were of no importance. The beast within me awakened, unleashed in all its savagery. But this time, I was in control. For the first time, I could direct my instincts. With each passing day spent on the wild, silent ridges of the mountains, Nerios grew a little more estranged from his own essence. He felt and understood the transformation in his body more and more each day. It used to be like an uncontrollable, painful curse. Now it was slowly transforming into a gift he was taming, a primal power bestowed upon him by fate. He could extend his claws at will, feel his muscles swell beneath his skin. At night, he could sharpen his eyesight, catching the slightest movement, the smallest whisper, even in the deepest darkness of the forest. However, as the full moon approached, beginning to rise like a blood-red circle in the sky, the beast within him awakened more powerfully, shaking him with a primal call rising from the depths of his soul. It became harder to cope with it each passing night. One midnight, deep within the mine tunnel where the pale light of the full moon filtered through, he awoke with a sudden sharp sound. It was as if his eardrums had burst. In his ears, that muffled, ancient whisper he heard in his dream seemed to ring true. "You must find Lykaon. He will show you the truth. He is waiting for you." This voice was not just a sound. It was a command, a call, an irresistible impulse rising from the depths of his soul. He opened his eyes, looked around the room, and reached for the hilt of his rusty sword. But there was no one there. Only the moonlight filtering through the window painted the room in a pale silvery hue, and from afar, heart-stirring, echoing wolf howls could be heard.
These howls no longer felt alien to him, as if they were the echo of his own soul, his own changing body, the voice of the Lykaon within him. His mind was in turmoil, his sanity hung by a thread. The next morning he woke up rested, but with a restless soul. He had to follow the whisper. He had to find Lykaon. In one of the mountain villages, while talking about this curse, he heard the name of an old woman, blind Elenea. People said she could see the past and the future, knew ancient secrets, and could hear the whispers of spirits. A glimmer of hope appeared within him, like a tiny sparkle at the end of a dark tunnel. This woman might guide him. Without losing any time, he set off, this time without knowing the way, just heading where fate dragged him. His steps were quick, as if the new power within him pushed him further. After 3 days of arduous walking, he reached a small, modest hut carved into steep rocks. Around the hut there were dried grasses dancing with the wind. The atmosphere held an ancient secret so old that even time itself seemed hesitant to touch it. The air around the hut blew differently, heavier, more dense. Nerios stood on the threshold of the hut, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The woman was older than he expected. Every line on her face told a story of a lived life, a carried burden, all the pain seen and all the secrets known. She had no eyes, but only deep hollows and a kind of unearthly light shining within them. It was as if the universe itself, fate itself, looked at him through those hollows. There was a strange smell of plants and earth in the air. Before Nerios had a chance to say anything, the woman spoke in a muffled yet surprisingly strong voice. "You're coming. I knew. I've been waiting for you, child of Lykaon." Nerios flinched, his heart pounding. How did she know? The expression on his face was filled with astonishment and fear. Was this woman a witch or a messenger of a goddess? "I am just Nerios," he said, his voice trembling, alien to himself. "I am just an ordinary soldier returning from Troy, nothing more. I don't want to carry this curse." The woman laughed, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves, but her laughter was not joyous, rather wise and full of pain, carrying the burden of centuries. "You are no longer. That soldier remained in the ashes of Troy, in that fire. Now you are more, not less. You, the heir of Lykaon, are a bearer of a curse and a power. Your destiny, as I see it, has changed with you."
The woman extended her trembling old hands to the table, pulling out an ancient, worn parchment made of animal hide. On it was a faded but still striking image carrying the dust of centuries, the depiction of a muscular, wild, powerful wolf-headed man, Lykaon. His eyes, like Nerios's own eyes, were yellow and burning, as if the spirit in the parchment was looking at him. Every muscle, every strand of Lykaon's fur was meticulously rendered. "He is not just a legend," the woman said, her voice seemingly coming from the depths of the past, directly from ancient times. "He existed. The gods cursed him, turned him into a monster, because he dared to eat human flesh, the greatest taboo. He equated himself with the gods, which is why he was punished. But he turned the curse into a power, created his own lineage, established his own kingdom. Now he lives in your blood, breathes in your soul, walks with you. Nerios looked at the parchment, the eyes of the man in the picture. They were exactly as he had seen in his dreams. The same sharpness, the same savagery, the same ancient wisdom. For a moment he wondered, was this man the Lykaon from his dream? Perhaps this was his own destiny, a fate he could not escape. "Can I be freed from this curse?" he asked, a last shred of despair, a tiny glimmer of hope in his voice. The woman shook her head with a wise expression, a sad smile appearing on her lips. "This is not a curse, Nerios. It is a legacy. You are the last of Lykaon's lineage. You are the last link. This power will continue with you. You must find him, confront him, understand him, so that this legacy does not destroy you." "Where is he?" Nerios asked, surprise and curiosity combined in his voice, wanting to solve the riddle. "Not in the land of the dead," the woman said, the light in her eye sockets flickering, as if she was looking into an invisible realm, "but not counted among the living either. In a passage, somewhere in between, neither dead nor alive, neither human nor beast, as if suspended in an interdimensional void. He is waiting there." The woman took a deep breath, as if her soul was weary from sharing an ancient secret, her old body trembling. "In the northern mountains, close to the sky, in the embrace of the peaks, there is an ancient temple carved into the stones. That temple was built by Lykaon's own hands, with the power of his first blood. He has been waiting there for centuries, waiting for you, his last heir." Nerios stood up, a new, unshakable resolve budding within him. He had to move towards the unknown, because fleeing was no longer an option. "Then I will go," he said, his voice stronger this time. "My destiny calls me there. If Lykaon is waiting for me, I will wait for him too." The woman reached out to him, placing her cold, bony hand on Nerios's shoulder. Her touch was icy. "Be careful," she warned, her voice no more than a whisper, like a prophecy. "Lykaon will tell you the truth, the origin of his curse, the price of being his heir. But truth can sometimes be the heaviest burden, a burden your heart cannot bear, your mind cannot bear. You are still human for now, but that truth can change you forever. It can completely unleash the beast within you, and you may never return. If you wish to be the master of the curse, you must pay this price." When Nerios left the hut, darkness had begun to fall. The sky took on shades of purple and gray, the last rays of daylight disappearing on the western horizon. He looked towards the northern mountains. In the distance, amidst the shadows of the peaks, the silhouette of the temple blind Elenea had spoken of seemed to appear, like a ghost rising in the dark. Something was waiting for him there. Perhaps an answer, a solution to his curse. Perhaps an end, the end of his human existence. Or perhaps a new beginning. the deepest point of his destiny, the start of an eternal cycle. There was no doubt now. He had to find Lykaon, and he had to confront him. This was not just a curse, but also his final battle.
Nerios was no longer alone. With every step deep into the mountains, he felt a pair of eyes watching him from among the shadows, as if they could even hear him breathe. At night, the ancient silence of the forest was filled with distant whispers, footsteps, and unseen gazes. The words of the seer, blind Elinea, still echoed in his mind like prophecies. Either madness or an ancient power. He felt the existence of this power more deeply each passing day, that primal energy circulating in his muscles like the fire in his veins. But the price of this power, this cursed legacy, was heavy. He was steadily drifting away from his own humanity, falling into the grip of a monster. In his mind, the thin line between humanity and savagery blurred more with each passing day. Now, when he looked in the mirror, he no longer saw only his own reflection, but also the shadow of the werewolf within him. One night, in the pale moonlight, he took refuge in an abandoned, moss-covered, column-shattered ancient temple by a lake close to the mountain peak. The ruins of the temple resisted the cruel grip of time, yet also carried the sorrow of abandonment. The faded reliefs on its walls whispered forgotten stories of ancient gods and heroes. Nerios, leaning his tired body against a stone pillar, trying to collect his thoughts, encountered 3 warriors emerging from the temple's dim shadows. They had appeared silently, like ghosts. They wore ancient Greek armor, rusty but well-maintained, their emblems worn away by time. Their swords rested in their scabbards, rusty but sharp, as if they had witnessed thousands of battles. But what truly stood out were their eyes. Burning fiercely, they glowed with a sharp hatred and determination, as if they had seen the monster within Nerios. The eldest, through his long gray beard, spoke in a low voice, but every word was like a hammer blow. "We found you, Nerios, Lykaon's last heir, the cursed seed of Troy." Nerios flinched, the wolf within him awakened by a sudden sense of danger. He stepped back, his hand gripping the hilt of his rusty sword. "I am only looking for myself," he snarled. "You have no quarrel with me." "We were looking for you, too," said the second warrior, his voice cold and sharp, as he slowly drew his sword from its scabbard, the sound of metal echoing off the temple's stone walls. "We are the sons of the sun, keepers of an ancient oath. We hunt the cursed, especially those like you who turn the curse into a gift." The third, the youngest, silently moved behind Nerios like a shadow, almost merging with the temple's darkness. In his hand was a short bronze dagger, gleaming in the moonlight. "There is no place for your kind in this world. You cannot carry humanity and monstrosity at once. You are either one or the other." Something awakened within Nerios, an anger, a defiance. His claws emerged on their own, his nails elongated, his skin thickened, his teeth lengthened, his lips drew back, his facial muscles tensed. His body was beginning to be controlled by a savage force.
But this time he was not afraid. He had no place left to run. Retreating was not an option. "I have harmed no one," he growled, his voice sounding alien even to himself. "Do not provoke me."
"You haven't yet," said the old warrior, his face devoid of pity or hesitation, only cold determination. He drew his sword from its scabbard. The sharp sound of metal slicing through the air echoed within the temple. The other warriors also drew their weapons, all three surrounding Nerios. The fight was short but brutal. The ancient stones of the temple bore witness to blood and death. Nerios tried to control the monster within him. He wanted to use Lykaon's power without completely losing his humanity. However, when the first blood was shed, everything blurred, his mind clouded. The young warrior's dagger had pierced Nerios' shoulder, but the wound healed instantly. At that moment, a wave of rage consumed his entire being. The reins of the beast within him snapped. In a flash of fury, using his claws and teeth, he tore apart the youngest warrior. The warrior's scream echoed within the temple, then suddenly ceased. When the taste of blood filled his mouth, warm and metallic, he pulled himself back from the depths of savagery. His eyes began to return to their original color. "Stop!" he cried, his voice muffled, kneeling before the torn warrior, his hands trembling. "I don't want to fight. What do you want with me?" But there was no pity in the old warrior's eyes, only deep hatred and the weight of destiny. "The choice is not yours, Nerios. This curse will pursue you until you die. Either we hunt you, or Lykaon's power will completely consume you. There is no third way." The other warrior, hoisting his wounded comrade onto his shoulder and retreating, delivered a final warning, his voice icy. "In our next encounter, either you will die or we will. Lykaon's legacy cannot exist in this world. You cannot disrupt this balance. You are a mistake, an anomaly." His eyes glinned with hatred, then they vanished into the darkness. Nerios was left alone on the blood-stained stone floor of the temple. His hands trembled. They were both human and beast hands. Drops of blood flowed from his palms. He looked at the face of the man he had killed, a young and innocent face. Perhaps he was a boy in his 20s, just starting his life. Perhaps, like Nerios himself, he was just doing his duty, fighting for his own beliefs. Nerios was horrified by his own monstrousness. For the first time, he had shed innocent blood, and this made him question his humanity. That night, as he was crushed under the weight of Lykaon's curse, he cried for the first time. As tears streamed down his cheeks, instead of a salty taste, there was the metallic taste of blood in his mouth, choking him. And at that moment, with painful clarity, he understood that he could no longer be fully human nor fully beast in this world. He was trapped between two worlds, in the midst of his curse and his humanity. When morning came, as the first rays of the sun filtered through the temple's broken columns, he had two choices. Either he would flee, constantly hunted, living like a victim, allowing the beast within him to completely consume him, or he would find Lykaon and delve into the origin of this curse, challenge him, and perhaps destroy him. This would be an arduous journey, but returning, going back to his old life, was impossible. As he began to walk towards the mountains, he had already made his decision. He would no longer be a hunter nor a victim.
He would pursue his own destiny. He would become the master of his curse, and he would not stop until he found Lykaon. This was his final battle.
The nights on the wild, lofty peaks of the mountains stretched on, each passing moment growing heavier with Nerios's internal transformation, rooting him deeper to its essence. Every muscle fiber, every nerve ending in his body had accepted Lykaon's curse, this savage metamorphosis. His muscles were stronger, his claws sharper, his senses more acute. Every bone, every muscle had perfectly adapted to his new form, as if nature had reshaped him for this new existence. But his soul still resisted. It swayed between his humanity and his monstrosity, like a battered ship caught in a storm that was also raging within him. His power grew steadily. He could sense even the deepest, darkest parts of the forest like an animal, picking up every whisper, every scent from miles away. He was now the fiercest of hunters, the most unknown of victims, standing at the intersection of two worlds. Yet, despite all this power and sensation, he still couldn't find an answer to that ancient question echoing in his mind, that doubt gnawing at his soul. Who am I? A human, a curse, or a brand new being, something undefined, a void among the gods? The Koroi cult, the Sons of the Sun, had not returned after that savage encounter. They were clearly waiting in the shadows, like predators observing their prey. But Nerios now knew. Only the physical battles with them were over. Now it was time for the battle of the soul, his fight with the beast within, with his own humanity, and perhaps even with the gods. Both sought to seize his essence. One side wanted to drag him completely into savagery, while the other sought to strip him of his humanity. This was a battle of choice. One night, as the starless, pitch-black sky descended upon him, amidst the ruins of the ancient temple on the mountain peak, where Lykaon's whispers had called him, he heard a voice. It was neither the rustling of the wind, nor the sound of an animal, nor a human whisper. It was a deep, echoing, cosmic whisper that descended directly into his mind, feeling as if it came from the universe itself. The power in your blood is not yours, Nerios. It is Lykaon's legacy, the seed of a curse. I neither gave it nor did you earn it. It is merely a transference. But now, what you do with it is for you to decide. The choice is yours. Your destiny is in your hands, like a piece of clay you will shape. Nerios followed this divine call. His feet, as if part of an ancient ritual, led him to the old ruined altar where Lykaon had once offered sacrifices, shed blood, and defied the gods. The altar's mosaics were broken, its stones covered in moss, and the blood stain on it had darkened with time, but was still visible. However, a powerful, dark energy still lingered around it, as if the altar had trapped all the rituals performed there for thousands of years. There, under the pale moonlight, like a dream, from within a mist, he saw a figure forged from shadows, rising from the earth. Zeus. But he was not the mighty, lightning-wielding king of Olympus, sparkling in divine splendor. He was like an angry, old, weary, perhaps even regretful man, a dethroned ruler. His clothes were worn, and the weight of thousands of years was etched on his face, each line like a record of all humanity's mistakes. In his eyes there was both arrogance and deep regret, a weariness from witnessing humanity's flaws, perhaps the burden of his own mistakes. Zeus spoke, his voice echoing like thunder, but also weary, as if all his energy had been drained. He was the first king to offer human sacrifice, to eat human flesh, Lykaon. A mortal with an audacity that even the gods found abhorrent, dared to sacrifice his own son to me. He dared to test my wisdom, to question my power. That is why I cursed him. I turned him into what he had made himself, a monster, a wolf that fed on human flesh. This was his deserved fate, a lesson to humanity. But I did not kill him, because his curse would show humans what they truly were, how deep the savagery within them could descend. It would be a warning, a lesson, a mirror held to the darkness in humanity's heart.
Nerios clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms, but he felt no pain. All his anger, all his pain was directed at this god. He had been forced to pay the price for his curse, yet it was Lykaon's mistake. "What about me?" he snarled, his voice somewhere between human and wolf, grating to the ears. "Why am I paying the price for his mistake? Why must I bear this burden? Why was I chosen, a nameless soldier of Troy?" "Because you are now his heir. His blood flows in your veins. You are the living proof of his curse, and his legacy chose you, just as the shield chose Erasmus. This is fate, like a river finding its bed. However," Zeus looked into Nerios' eyes. The regret in his eyes appeared with a momentary flicker, as if he had remembered a past mistake. "The one who bears the curse can end the curse, can control the curse, can turn it into his own weapon. Lykaon could not do this. He only became a monster. But you are different." Zeus's figure wavered, beginning to dissipate like a mist, a cold wind spreading around. All that remained was an enigmatic stone fragment on the altar. It was a partial inscription, carved in an ancient language, with deep marks of time on its surface. "He who is wolf questions the god." These words seemed like the handwriting of Lykaon himself, that audacious king who dared to challenge the power of the gods. It was a message, a defiance, a whisper of rebellion that transcended centuries. And that night, Nerios decided to carve his own path. He would be neither fully human nor fully wolf. He was now beyond both, a bridge between two existences, a new point of balance. He was no longer bound to Zeus, to the curse, or to the heavy shadow of his past. He would write his own destiny with his own hands, like a sculptor carving marble. This curse would be a part of him, but he would be the one to command it. The power
was now under his control. He returned to the forest, but this time not to escape, nor to hide, nor to live like prey. He would stay there to find the balance within himself, perhaps one day to protect others from the darkness of this curse, to be a pioneer of a new existence. Perhaps one day he could use this curse as a gift. He inherited the curse, but what truly terrified the gods, even Zeus, the mighty king of Olympus, was this: one day someone bearing the curse might learn to control it, might bend it to their will, and could turn that curse into a power, changing the balance, the very fate of the world. And that person was now clear. Lycaon's last heir, the surviving soldier of Troy, was now the pioneer of a new path. Nerios, human, beast, balance.